Good evening, weary traveler, and welcome once more to a tranquil journey through the quiet, echoing corridors of history, as the day's last light softly, slowly, and peacefully fades away, retreating beyond the distant horizon, and the modern world outside your window begins its gentle, nightly hush. We extend to you a warm invitation. We encourage you to settle deeply, very deeply, into your most comfortable and secure space. Allow your thoughts to gently and serenely unwind, slowly untangling themselves from the day's persistent concerns. Prepare your mind, calmly and patiently, for a truly immersive, yet profoundly tranquil voyage into a time long past, to a world where urban life pulsed with a different, often overwhelming, rhythm, and survival was an intricate, daily art. Tonight, we will venture far beyond the hurried, often fragmented rhythm of our contemporary existence. We will turn our gaze, with deliberate intention, towards one of the most iconic and powerful civilizations in human history, ancient Rome. Specifically, we will explore a side of this grand empire that is rarely depicted in its true, crowded, noisy, yet profoundly monotonous reality. Our focus will be on why you would outlast a day in an ancient Roman insula, providing a deep dive into the everyday life of the common Roman citizen, particularly those who resided in the vast multi-storied apartment blocks that defined the city's bustling urban landscape. This is a narrative that seeks to transcend the grand tales of emperors and gladiators. Instead, we will delve into the harsh, often uncomfortable, yet deeply repetitive, and surprisingly uniformed routines that govern the lives of millions within the cramped, noisy confines of Roman city living. Imagine for a long, quiet, contemplative moment, a life dictated not by personal space or modern amenities, but by the relentless, pervasive presence of countless neighbors, by the constant murmur of a city that never truly slept, and by the sheer, overwhelming proximity to the daily struggles and simple joys of others. This was a life of quiet endurance, of profound sensory experiences, and of an almost hypnotic monotony that paradoxically can now serve to lull the modern mind into a state of deep calm. We will explore the subtle sounds of distant street vendors, the pervasive scent of wood smoke, and refuse the textures of worn stone and rough textiles, and the endless, almost invisible movements of bodies living in close quarters. This is a story not of heroic battles or dramatic political intrigues, but of the silent, persistent grind of daily existence, of the human spirit's quiet resilience in the face of overwhelming urban density and often challenging conditions. It is a narrative woven from threads of physical discomfort, of repetitive routines, and of the subtle yet ever-present challenges of navigating social hierarchies and basic survival in a city that was in its time a true marvel of the ancient world. It is designed to be a gentle lullaby, an invitation for your own mind to find its perfect stillness, allowing the rhythmic, unceasing sounds and detailed sensations of a bygone era to guide you towards a truly restorative rest. So now, as you listen, breathe deeply, very deeply, letting your chest gently rise and fall with each breath. Feel the comforting, soft weight of your blankets surrounding you, wrapping you in a cocoon of warmth and security. Feel the gentle, steady rhythm of your own breath, a quiet anchor in the present moment. And finally, allow your mind to simply drift, to slowly, peacefully, begin its imagined journey into this crowded, ancient, and profoundly tranquil historical landscape. Let the whispers of distant Roman life and the imagined echoes of countless daily routines guide your thoughts, serenely and without haste, towards a state of profound stillness, ultimate peace, and a truly restful, dream-filled sleep. Having gently embarked upon our tranquil journey into the heart of ancient Rome, allowing our modern minds to slowly drift towards its grand, stone-laden landscapes, let us now fully immerse ourselves in the lived experience of the ordinary Roman citizen. We are about to step into a world that, despite its historical distance, shares a fundamental similarity with our own modern urban existence, yet is profoundly, often uncomfortably, different in its everyday realities. Imagine, for a quiet, contemplative moment, awakening within the confines of an insula, one of the vast multi-storied apartment blocks that housed the majority of Rome's burgeoning population. This is a place where space was a precious commodity, where privacy was a fleeting luxury, and where the very rhythm of life was dictated by the inescapable proximity of countless others. Picture yourself stirring, not with a sudden jolt, but with a slow, gradual recognition of your sleeping space is small, perhaps just a single room, or a tiny alcove, shared with several family members or even other inhabitants. The air, even in the stillness before dawn, is not fresh and crisp. Instead, It carries a complex, persistent blend of lingering odors, the faint, earthy scent of damp plaster from the walls, the subtle, acrid temps of stale cooking smoke from previous meals, and perhaps the faint, pervasive smell of human habitation, unavoidable in such close quarters. There are no expansive windows offering wide views. Instead, a small, often unglazed opening high on the wall might allow only the most meager hint of light or air to penetrate the interior, keeping the room in a state of perpetual cool dimness. Your bed, a simple wooden frame with a straw mattress, offers only a utilitarian comfort. Its rough texture, a constant, subtle reminder of your humble station. The awakening is not silent. Even before the sun has begun its slow ascent, the insula around you begins to stir with a subtle, internal hum. You might hear the soft rhythmic breathing of your sleeping companions, the almost imperceptible rustle of rough woolen blankets as someone shifts in their sleep, or the gentle creak of old timber as the structure itself subtly responds to the cooling morning air from other nearby rooms, separated only by thin wooden partitions or flimsy curtains. You might distinguish the muffled sounds of other families beginning their day. A low cough, a quiet murmur of voices, the soft scrape of a wooden bucket being moved. These sounds are not intrusive in an alarming way, but they are a constant, gentle reminder of the unbroken proximity of your neighbors, of lives intertwining in a shared, confined space. As the pre-dawn hours slowly progress, the internal sounds of the insula begin to mingle with the first, distant whispers from the street below. The ancient city of Rome never truly slept in complete silence, even in its darkest hours. You might hear the distant muffled clatter of an early cart on the cobblestones, its wooden wheels rumbling softly, carrying produce to the bustling markets. Perhaps the faint, rhythmic footsteps of an early riser heading to their duties, or the far-off call of a watchman. The air, though still cool, now carries the faint, sharp scent of wood smoke. As countless cooking fires are slowly being kindled across the city, their tendrils of smoke rising into the nascent dawn. You would rise slowly, carefully, your muscles stiff from the hard sleeping surface, your bare feet meeting the cold, uneven floor, feeling the rough texture of the ancient stones beneath your soles. Your morning ablutions are brief, functional, and devoid of the luxury of modern plumbing. There is no private bathroom in your small insular dwelling. Instead, you might have a simple clay basin and a pitcher of cold water, brought from a communal fountain or well the previous day. Imagine splashing the cool water onto your face, feeling its bracing chill awaken your skin. A fleeting moment of freshness quickly absorbed by the dry air. The rough linen cloth used to dry your face is coarse, functional. The scents are earthy, natural, devoid of any perfumed soaps or elaborate toiletries. Your clothing, simple and practical, consists of a basic tunic, perhaps made of undyed wool or coarse linen, a garment chosen for durability and ease of movement rather than style. Its fabric feels rough, unyielding against your skin, a familiar, unchanging sensation that defines your daily attire. Breakfast, if it can even be called that, is a quick, basic affair, consumed in the dimness of your small room or out in a communal area. It might consist of a piece of hard, unleavened bread, its crust rough against your tongue, perhaps dipped into a little water or cheap wine, or softened with a few dried figs. The aromas are simple, earthy, utilitarian. This meal is not for enjoyment, but purely for sustenance, providing the minimal fuel necessary for the long, arduous day ahead. It is consumed swiftly, silently, almost mechanically, a direct reflection of the day's demanding schedule. There is no lingering, no conversation. The focus is entirely on the quick intake of calories before the city fully awakens. As the sun begins its slow, relentless climb above the rooftops, casting long, pale shadows down the narrow, winding streets, the insula truly comes alive with sound and motion. The once distant street noises now swell, merging into a continuous, deafening roar that permeates every corner of your dwelling. Imagine the cacophony that begins to assault your ears, the incessant shouts of street vendors hawking their wares. Fish for sale, fresh bread, water, their voices echoing off the tall stone buildings. The rhythmic, persistent clatter of countless wooden carts on the cobblestones, their heavy wheels grinding and rumbling over the uneven surfaces, carrying goods, construction materials, or refuse. The insistent bleating of goats being driven through the streets, the distant lowing of oxen, the occasional sharp bark of a dog. Mixed with these sounds is the constant, surging murmur of thousands upon thousands of human voices, the hurried footsteps of pedestrians rushing to work, the casual conversations of neighbors, the laughter of children playing in the narrow alleys below. the raised voices of arguments, the rhythmic hammering from a nearby smithy, the distant, dull thud of construction from another part of the city. The noise is immense, overwhelming, and unceasing, a vibrant tapestry of urban life that never truly quiets down until the deepest hours of the night. It is a constant, physical presence, vibrating through the very walls of your insula, making privacy of sound a forgotten luxury. To have a quiet thought, to truly hear yourself think, often required a deliberate effort of internal focus amidst this endless, pervasive clamor. The air, too, transforms as the city awakens. The initial coolness gives way to a pervasive warmth, often humid and heavy. It carries a complex, overwhelming blend of odors. The sharp, acrid smell of wood smoke from countless hearths, mixing with the sweet, pervasive scent of freshly baked bread from the nearby tabernet shops. But these pleasant aromas are often overshadowed by less agreeable ones. The faint yet persistent stench of uncollected refuse left in the streets, the sharp tang of human and animal waste from inadequate sanitation systems, the earthy odor of damp, unwashed bodies in the crowded thoroughfares, and perhaps the metallic scent of sweat from bustling laborers. These smells are not fleeting. They linger, permeating the very fabric of the city, becoming an unavoidable part of your daily sensory experience, a constant, subtle reminder of the city's dense, living reality. The act of simply retrieving water for the day is a lengthy, monotonous ritual that highlights the lack of modern conveniences. There is no running water piped directly into your insular apartment. Instead, you would carry heavy ceramic jars or large leather buckets to a communal fountain or well, often located a considerable distance away. Imagine the slow, arduous walk through the crowded, narrow streets, carefully navigating around bustling vendors, dodging carts, and avoiding puddles of unknown origin. The weight of the empty jars would pull at your arms. Then comes the wait. Long lines of other insular residents, all performing the same daily task, would stretch patiently before the fountain. You would stand, silently, for what could be a considerable amount of time, listening to the murmuring conversations around you, the rhythmic splashing of water as others filled their containers, and the constant, overwhelming roar of the city. Finally, your turn comes. You fill your heavy jars, feeling their cold, wet ceramic against your hands, and begin the slow, arduous walk back, the water sloshing rhythmically inside, its weight a constant, physical burden on your arms and shoulders. This repetitive, labor-intensive task is performed day after day, rain or shine, a quiet, physical testament to the demands of basic survival. The structure of the insula itself, while a marvel of ancient urban planning, presented its own unique set of challenges and discomforts. These buildings could rise many stories high, sometimes as many as 5 or 6 floors. The higher your apartment, the cheaper the rent, but also the more precarious the living conditions. Imagine the long, arduous climb up steep, often narrow wooden staircases, their steps worn smooth by countless feet, creaking ominously with every ascent. The higher you lived, the weaker the construction often became, making the threat of collapse or fire a constant, quiet undercurrent of anxiety. Cooking fires, lit within the flimsy wooden structures of the upper floors, were a frequent cause of devastating conflagrations that could sweep through an entire insula in minutes, turning lives into ashes. The pervasive smell of wood smoke, mixed with the ever-present stench of the city, was a constant reminder of this danger. Even within your own small, cramped dwelling, privacy was a concept rarely fully realized. Sounds from neighboring rooms easily penetrated thin walls. Conversations, arguments, cries of children, and even the intimate sounds of daily life would filter through, creating a continuous, overwhelming backdrop to your personal existence. There was no true escape from the omnipresent reality of human proximity. This constant awareness of others, while fostering a sense of community for some, for others created a pervasive sense of overwhelm, a constant background noise in the mind that made true solitude a distant dream. The visual landscape was equally dense. From your window, if you had one, you would see not distant horizons, but other insulae, their windows gazing back at yours, a maze of crowded humanity. The diet of the common Roman citizen living in an insula was simple, often monotonous, and heavily reliant on basic staples. Breakfast, as mentioned, was minimal. Lunch, often eaten quickly at midday, might consist of more bread, perhaps some cheese, olives, or leftover cold vegetables from the previous evening. Dinner, the main meal, would be the most substantial, but still far from lavish. Imagine the aromas of a simple stew bubbling over a small, portable brazier in your room, its smoke filling the already thick air, the taste of your simple fare lentils, chickpeas, coarse grains, occasional fish or cheap cuts of meat would be consistent, providing sustenance but little in the way of culinary adventure. The entire culinary experience was one of necessary repetition, of consuming familiar, basic flavors, a stark contrast to the rich, varied diets of the wealthy. The days in the insula were long, filled with a continuous cycle of mundane yet demanding tasks. After retrieving water, you would likely head to your work, whether it was manual labor in the docks, working in a small workshop, or serving in a taberna. The walk to work would be another crowded, noisy experience, filled with the same sounds and smells of the city. The work itself, for most common Romans, was physical and repetitive, consuming the majority of your daylight hours. Returning home in the evening, after the long, tiring workday, you would face the task of preparing a simple meal, perhaps tending to family needs, or within the bustling, still noisy environment of the insula. The sheer physical exhaustion at the end of such a day would be profound, a deep bone-weary fatigue that permeated every limb, every muscle. Even the evenings, meant for rest, offered little true respite from the city's ceaseless activity. The streets below, though perhaps less crowded, would still be alive with activity. The sounds of revelers in taverns, the faint strains of music, the distant chatter of late-night pedestrians. The air would still carry its complex mixture of odors, perhaps now dominated by the smell of wine and cooking from the thermopolia. Fast food stalls. Sleeping, for many, would have been a challenge, requiring deep exhaustion to overcome the continuous background noise and the uncomfortable warmth or cold of their small dwellings. The sounds of the city, both near and far, would slowly, gradually, fade into a low, pervasive hum that became the soundtrack to their sleep. This constant, unavoidable presence of noise, smells, and other people was the true, grinding reality of everyday life for countless Romans in their insulae, a challenge to modern sensibilities, yet for them, simply the unchanging rhythm of existence, guiding them, through sheer weariness, towards the embrace of sleep. Having deeply immersed ourselves in the bustling, often overwhelming sensory world of the ancient Roman insula, feeling the incessant noise, smelling the myriad odors, and sensing the constant proximity of countless lives, let us now slowly and with a profound shift in perspective, turn our attention to a very different facet of Roman existence. We are about to step into the elevated yet equally precarious sphere of its elite, specifically into the intellectual and ethical struggles of a man whose life was a paradox. A wealthy, influential philosopher intimately entwined with the perilous intricacies of imperial power, constantly striving for inner tranquility amidst external chaos. We speak of Lucius Annaeus Seneca, a prominent Stoic philosopher, playwright, and statesman, whose journey through life was a profound, quiet test of his own philosophical convictions. Imagine Seneca's early life, a stark contrast to the cramped conditions of the insula. Born around 04 BC in Corduba, Hispania, modern-day Spain, into a wealthy and influential equestrian family, his upbringing was one of privilege and extensive education. He was brought to Rome as an infant, allowing him to experience the grandeur of the capital from a very young age, but from a position of comfort and access. His education was broad and deep, encompassing rhetoric, grammar, and crucially, philosophy. He immersed himself in the teachings of Stoicism, a school of thought that emphasized virtue, reason, and an acceptance of fate as the path to inner peace, or ataraxia. Imagine him as a young student sitting quietly in a spacious villa, the distant sounds of the city muffled, poring over ancient texts by Zeno, Cleanthes, and Epictetus. Each word a slow, deliberate step towards understanding the principles of living a good life, cultivating resilience of the mind against the inevitable fluctuations of fortune, the cool, smooth feel of a papyrus scroll, the faint scent of ink and aged paper. These were the constant companions of his early intellectual awakening. Seneca's early career as a rhetorician and orator was remarkably successful, his eloquence earning him considerable renown and wealth. However, the political landscape of Rome under emperors like Caligula and Claudius was volatile, fraught with intrigue and danger, even for those at the top. His sharp intellect and growing influence inevitably drew unwanted attention. In 41 AD, under Emperor Claudius, Seneca found himself accused of adultery with Julia Livilla, the emperor's niece. The accusation, possibly fabricated, led to his immediate exile to the remote island of Corsica. Imagine the profound shift in his existence. From the bustling intellectual and social hub of Rome to the stark, isolated beauty of a Mediterranean island, this was not a quick, dramatic banishment. It was an 8-year-long period of enforced solitude. During these 8 years of exile in Corsica, far from the machinations of the imperial court, Seneca's philosophical resolve was put to its severest test. This was a time of forced introspection, of quiet contemplation, of wrestling with the very Stoic principles he had so earnestly studied. Picture him on the rugged, windswept coastline of Corsica, the relentless, rhythmic crashing of waves against the rocks, a constant, monotonous sound that both soothed and emphasized his isolation. The air would be clean, salty, carrying the scent of wild herbs and damp earth. He would have spent countless hours in quiet observation of nature, the slow growth of plants, the steady flight of birds, the unchanging cycle of tides. He continued to write, producing essays and letters, meticulously crafting his thoughts, honing his philosophical arguments, exploring themes of patience, endurance, and the acceptance of adversity. The very act of writing, slow and deliberate with a quill on papyrus, became a form of sustained meditation, a quiet anchor in his lonely existence. This period of quiet suffering, endured with philosophical stoicism, deepened his understanding of human resilience and the true meaning of inner freedom, forged not by external circumstance, but by the discipline of the mind. His return to Rome in 49 AD, orchestrated by Agrippina the Younger, Emperor Claudius's ambitious wife, marked a new, profoundly complex chapter in his life. Agrippina chose Seneca to be the tutor to her young son, Nero, the future emperor. Imagine the delicate, high-stakes nature of this role, guiding the moral and intellectual development of a child who would one day hold absolute power over the known world. Seneca, a Stoic who advocated temperance and virtue, now found himself intimately involved in the education of a young prince who would become synonymous with tyranny and excess. His days would have been filled with the quiet, careful guidance of Nero, teaching him rhetoric, literature, and the principles of good governance, all while navigating the treacherous currents of the imperial court. His voice, when addressing young Nero, would have been calm, measured, persuasive, carefully choosing each word. As Nero ascended to the throne in 54 AD, Seneca, alongside the Praetorian prefect Sextus Afranius Burrus, became one of his chief advisors. For the first few years of Nero's reign, often referred to as the Quinquennium Neronis, Rome experienced a period of relatively good governance, largely attributed to Seneca's calming, guiding influence. Imagine Seneca in the palace, surrounded by unimaginable luxury and subtle dangers. The sounds would be hushed, the movements of courtiers quiet, the rustle of silk robes a common background sound. He would spend hours in deep conversation with Nero, gently guiding his decisions, always attempting to steer the young emperor towards moderation and justice. This was not a life of overt power plays, but of quiet, constant vigilance, of subtle persuasion, of strategic silences, and of measured counsel. Every piece of advice given, every philosophical principle shared, was delivered with a quiet, persistent hope that it would take root in the mind of the volatile young ruler. The immense pressure of such a role, the constant need for self-control and calculated diplomacy, would have been an immense, silent burden. As Nero's reign slowly, inexorably descended into tyranny and excess, Seneca's position became increasingly perilous. He witnessed Nero's growing paranoia, his increasingly erratic and cruel behavior, and his descent into moral depravity. Seneca's philosophical principles, advocating detachment from material wealth and acceptance of fate, now seemed to clash profoundly with the realities of his own immense fortune and his proximity to a murderous tyrant. He tried repeatedly, quietly, to withdraw from public life, offering to return his vast wealth to Nero, seeking a life of quiet philosophical contemplation, far from the blood-soaked intrigues of the palace. Imagine the subtle, diplomatic dance of these repeated requests. Each refusal from Nero, a tightening of the invisible noose around his neck. The air in the palace would have grown heavy with unspoken fear, with the subtle tension of unseen dangers. Seneca's thoughts would turn more and more to his Stoic principles, to finding inner peace amidst the gathering storm. Seneca's philosophical writings, particularly his moral letters to Lucilius and his essays on topics like anger, tranquility, and the shortness of life, offer a profound insight into his quiet internal world. These were not works intended for immediate political impact, but rather as tools for personal ethical development, for the cultivation of inner peace. Imagine him in his study, a quiet room filled with scrolls and a writing desk, perhaps overlooking a serene garden. The sounds would be minimal, the soft scratching of his quill on papyrus, the gentle rustle of a scroll being unrolled, the faint, distant hum of the city. He would write slowly, deliberately, each sentence carefully crafted, each argument meticulously reasoned. He sought to apply Stoicism not as an abstract theory, but as a practical guide for daily living, for enduring suffering, for managing desires, and for accepting what cannot be changed. His words are imbued with a sense of calm wisdom, a gentle invitation to cultivate inner serenity regardless of external circumstances. He advocated for a simple, disciplined life, even while surrounded by luxury, a constant reminder that true wealth lies in the mind's freedom, not in possessions. The quiet, enduring influence of Stoicism, as articulated by Seneca, is deeply rooted in principles that resonate with those seeking peace in any era. It teaches the power of distinguishing between what we can control, our thoughts, our judgments, our actions, and what we cannot, external events, other people's actions, fortune. Imagine slowly internalizing this distinction, the immense mental burden lifted as you realize that most of your anxieties stem from trying to control the uncontrollable. It emphasizes cultivating virtue, wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance, not for external reward, but as their own intrinsic reward, leading to a life lived in harmony with nature and reason. It encourages the practice of negative visualization, quietly contemplating worst-case scenarios not to induce fear, but to build resilience and appreciate the present moment. This deliberate mental exercise, performed in the quiet of one's mind, leads to a profound sense of inner calm, an unshakable fortress against life's inevitable setbacks. Seneca's life, a constant tension between his philosophical ideals and the dangerous realities of Roman imperial power, finally reached its ultimate test in 65 AD. Nero, increasingly paranoid and ruthless, implicated Seneca in the Patrician conspiracy, a plot to assassinate the emperor. Whether Seneca was truly involved remains a historical debate, but for Nero, the accusation was enough. He issued an order for Seneca to commit suicide. Imagine the moment the news arrived at Seneca's villa, a sudden, brutal intrusion into his carefully cultivated tranquility. Yet, Seneca received the news with characteristic Stoic composure. He did not panic, he did not rage. Instead, he calmly embraced his fate, seeing it as the final, inevitable test of his philosophy. A moment to prove the strength of his internal fortress. He spent his final hours in quiet conversation with his wife, Pompeii Paulina, and his closest friends. He offered them words of comfort, urging them to find strength in their own philosophical principles, rather than mourning his passing. Imagine his voice, calm and steady, delivering these final lessons, his wisdom flowing even in the face of imminent death. The process of his suicide was slow, deliberate, and excruciating, yet he faced it with unwavering dignity, a final, public demonstration of his Stoic beliefs. He first cut his veins, but old age and a sparse diet made the blood flow slowly. He then drank hemlock, a traditional poison, but it too failed to act quickly. Finally, he requested to be placed in a warm bath, where the steam and warm water hastened the bleeding. The entire process was a slow, deliberate act of letting go, each breath becoming softer, each sensation fading, until his mind, finally, found its ultimate stillness, free from the burdens of the world. This profound, philosophical acceptance of death, not as a tragedy, but as a natural part of existence, cemented his legacy as a true Stoic master. The enduring legacy of Seneca lies not in his political power, which was ultimately fragile, but in the quiet, persistent wisdom contained within his writings. His letters and essays, filled with practical advice for living a virtuous and tranquil life, were painstakingly copied by scribes for centuries, cherished and studied by countless individuals long after the Roman Empire had faded. Imagine his words, penned so carefully in his quiet study or isolated exile, slowly making their way across time, offering solace and guidance to minds weary with their own struggles. His voice, though silent for millennia, continues to whisper wisdom into the ears of those who seek inner peace, inviting them to find stillness in a chaotic world, to cultivate resilience in the face of adversity, and to accept what cannot be changed, all while gently guiding them towards a truly restful and dream-filled sleep. Having deeply contemplated the profound internal struggles of a Stoic philosopher like Seneca, navigating the treacherous currents of Roman imperial power, and having understood the demanding, often overwhelming, realities of daily existence within the bustling, crowded insulae of ancient Rome, let us now, slowly and with a profound sense of silent wonder, turn our gaze. We are about to journey to a place where time itself seemingly stood still, where the ephemeral details of everyday Roman life were, in an instant, captured and preserved in an almost miraculous stillness. We are speaking of the ancient cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum, buried and then rediscovered, offering us an unparalleled, direct window into a world long past, frozen in a most extraordinary slumber. Imagine the vibrancy of these cities on a typical day in August of 79 AD. Pompeii, a bustling port town, its streets alive with the murmur of voices, the clatter of carts, the smells of bakeries and workshops. Herculaneum, a smaller, wealthier coastal town, its elegant villas overlooking the tranquil Bay of Naples. These were places of sun-drenched prosperity, their inhabitants going about their daily routines, utterly unaware that the majestic mountain looming silently above them, Mount Vesuvius, was about to awaken, not in a sudden, violent roar, but in a quiet, insidious release that would preserve them in an eternal, unexpected embrace. The eruption was not instantaneous in its destructive preservation. Instead, a series of phases unfolded, some slow, some swift, ultimately leading to a unique kind of sealing, a burial that was both tragic and paradoxically, a gift to history. The initial rediscovery of these buried cities was not a sudden archaeological triumph, but a slow, almost accidental unfolding spanning centuries. Imagine farmers working their fields in the regions above the buried cities, perhaps stumbling upon ancient coins or fragments of pottery, hints of a past hidden beneath the earth. Later, during the 16th and 17th centuries, workers digging wells or underground channels for water would occasionally encounter buried structures, fragments of frescoes, or pieces of ancient statuary. These discoveries were often treated as isolated curiosities, mere treasures to be plundered, rather than parts of a vast, coherent archaeological site. The scale of what lay beneath was simply unimaginable, shrouded in centuries of silence. The systematic excavation, the careful, deliberate work to uncover these buried worlds, only truly began in the mid-18th century, a process that has continued, patiently, methodically, for over 250 years. When archaeologists began their careful, painstaking work, they encountered a unique phenomenon of preservation. Unlike cities destroyed by fire or war, which leave behind only rubble and fragments, Pompeii and Herculaneum were primarily buried by volcanic ash and pumice. In Pompeii, successive layers of ash, some fine like powder, others coarse like gravel, descended gently, yet relentlessly, upon the city. Imagine the slow accumulation, layer upon layer, gently encasing everything it touched, from grand buildings to the smallest household objects. This ash, drying and hardening over time, created perfect molds of organic materials that eventually decomposed, leaving behind hollow spaces. This was not instantaneous incineration, but a gradual, silent entombment that held the details of daily life in perfect suspension. The process of excavating these sites is a study in profound patience and meticulous precision. Imagine the archaeologists, kneeling in the quiet sun, not with heavy machinery, but with delicate tools, a small hand trowel, a soft bristle brush, perhaps a sifting screen to catch the smallest fragments. Each scoop of ash, each delicate sweep of the brush, is performed with unwavering focus, revealing layer upon silent layer of history. The air is often dry, carrying the faint scent of ancient dust and volcanic earth. The sounds are minimal, the soft scrape of metal on hardened ash, the gentle whisper of brushes, the quiet clink of a newly discovered pottery shard. This slow, deliberate act of uncovering is profoundly meditative, a rhythmic connection with the hands and minds of those who lived long ago, a quiet conversation across millennia. Every fragment, every outline, every subtle discoloration in the soil holds a potential clue, requiring careful observation and thoughtful interpretation. What was preserved in this remarkable, silent encapsulation? It was not just grand temples and public buildings, but the minutiae of everyday life, captured in stunning, almost unnerving, detail. Imagine stepping into a Roman bakery in Pompeii, frozen in the very moment of its last operation. You might see loaves of bread, perfectly carbonized by the heat, still sitting in the oven, their familiar shapes perfectly preserved, or perhaps a street vendor's stall, with the remnants of charred fruit and nuts still arranged on its counter. The silence here is immense, broken only by your own soft breathing and the distant sounds of other visitors, their voices hushed by the profound atmosphere. These are not dramatic artifacts, they are the quiet, mundane objects of daily existence, brought to life through their extraordinary preservation. Perhaps the most haunting, yet profoundly captivating, discoveries are the plaster casts of victims from Pompeii. When excavators encountered the hollow spaces left by decomposed bodies, they had an ingenious idea: to pour liquid plaster into these voids. As the plaster hardened and the surrounding ash was carefully removed, the result was a three-dimensional mold, a perfect, silent tableau of the final moments of the victims. Imagine looking upon these casts, not grotesque images of terror, but serene, often resigned, figures frozen in their last, quiet positions. A man shielding his face with his arm, a family huddled together, a dog curled on its side. Their expressions are often peaceful, almost serene, suggesting that the end came swiftly, not with prolonged agony. These casts are not about horror, they are about the profound human connection across time, a silent whisper from the past, inviting quiet contemplation on the fragility of life and the unexpected embrace of time. The process of creating these casts, too, was slow, delicate, requiring immense care to ensure the fragile molds were not destroyed, a testament to the patient dedication of the archaeologists. Beyond the human forms, countless other everyday objects were preserved in this silent, unexpected time capsule. Imagine a set of simple medical instruments, perfectly preserved, gleaming softly in the gentle light, offering insights into ancient surgical practices, or perhaps a child's toy, a small worn doll or a miniature chariot, silently waiting for a hand that would never return. Pottery, common household tools, kitchen utensils, all these mundane items, often overlooked in other archaeological contexts, here tell a rich story of daily routines. You might see faint traces of graffiti on a wall, a simple message, a personal joke, a political slogan, offering a glimpse into the everyday thoughts and humor of the Roman populace, a quiet echo of their fleeting voices. The colors of the frescoes vibrant and still breathtakingly beautiful despite the passage of centuries adorned. The walls of villas and shops depicting mythological scenes, daily life, or garden vistas, each brushstroke frozen in time, inviting a slow, appreciative gaze. The streets themselves offer a profound insight into ancient urban life. Imagine walking along the worn, uneven cobblestones, their surfaces deeply grooved by the passage of countless chariots and carts over centuries. You can see the raised stepping stones at intersections, designed to allow pedestrians to cross without wading through the streets, accumulated refuse. Imagine the subtle sounds of your own modern shoes on these ancient stones, a quiet juxtaposition of eras. The sidewalks, narrow and often cluttered, would have been bustling with activity, yet now they are silent, preserved. Shops and taverns line the streets, their counters and amphories still in place, inviting the imagination to fill them with the quiet murmur of customers and the soft clinking of coins. This is a city frozen mid-sentence, its life paused, waiting for quiet observation. Herculaneum, though less known than Pompeii, offers an even more intimate, precise level of preservation due to its burial by pyroclastic flows, superheated gas and volcanic debris which solidified instantly. Imagine these flows, not as fire but as a dense, suffocating cloud of ash and gas that instantly solidified, perfectly encasing everything. This process preserved organic materials like wood, furniture, and even food in astonishing detail. You might see wooden beds, still standing in their rooms, their grain perfectly visible, or wooden doors, still intact on their hinges. Libraries containing wooden scrolls, though carbonized, still exist, offering a glimpse into the intellectual lives of its inhabitants. Even human remains, though charred to bone, were found in positions of quiet repose along the ancient shoreline, having sought shelter, offering a solemn, silent testament to the speed and finality of the event. The objects here whisper their secrets with even greater clarity, their preservation a silent miracle. The atmosphere of these archaeological sites today is profoundly unique. Unlike bustling modern cities, or even other active ruin sites, Pompeii and Herculaneum often possess an overwhelming sense of quietude. The sounds of modern visitors, even in groups, tend to be hushed, voices instinctively lowered by the weight of history that surrounds them. You walk along ancient streets, through silent houses, past ghostly bakeries, and through quiet public forums. The pervasive feeling is one of immense stillness, a sense of deep contemplation. The gentle sunlight illuminates ancient stones, casting long, peaceful shadows. The distant murmur of other visitors, the soft rustle of leaves in the occasional breeze, the chirping of cicadas in the summer sun, these are the only sounds that break the profound silence. inviting you to reflect on the lives that once thrived here and on the immense unhurried power of time and nature. The excavation work at Pompeii and Herculaneum is still ongoing, a continuous, quiet process that unfolds slowly, meticulously, year after year. New sections are still being uncovered, new buildings revealed, new artifacts gently brought to light. Imagine the quiet anticipation of the archaeologists, knowing that beneath every layer of ash, every mound of earth, there might be another silent secret, another forgotten story, waiting patiently to be revealed. This perpetual unveiling, this slow, deliberate uncovering of the past, reinforces the idea of history as a continuously unfolding mystery, a quiet invitation to keep looking, to keep learning, to keep learning, to keep listening to the whispers of ancient life. These silent cities serve as a profound, enduring monument to the transient nature of human endeavors and the immense, unhurried power of the natural world, forever holding their secrets in the gentle embrace of solidified ash. And as you contemplate these enduring mysteries, this quiet, preserved history, may your own mind find a similar stillness, a deep sense of peace, as you drift towards a most restful and dream-filled sleep. Having deeply immersed ourselves in the crowded, often overwhelming, sensory world of the ancient Roman Insula, experiencing the incessant noise, the myriad odors, and the constant, inescapable proximity of countless lives, and having then journeyed through the tragically beautiful, time-frozen cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum, we now embark on a profound shift in perspective. Let us slowly, and with a sense of quiet wonder, step into a vastly different, yet equally structured and fascinating realm within the same ancient Roman civilization, the daily life of the patrician elite, the wealthy and powerful citizens who resided in magnificent villas, often sprawling across the Roman countryside, or nestled discreetly within the quieter, more exclusive districts of the bustling city. Their existence, while undeniably opulent, was paradoxically governed by its own intricate set of disciplines and a pervasive, quiet grandeur, a rhythm of structured leisure that, in its very description, can invite a profound sense of peace. Imagine, for a long quiet moment, the gentle awakening within a sprawling Roman patrician villa. This awakening is not a jarring one, but a slow, luxurious process, a gradual return to consciousness from the depths of a deep, untroubled sleep. The first hints of dawn would not be heralded by a factory bell or street cries, but by the soft, diffused light filtering delicately through heavy, rich velvet curtains or intricate linen drapes, their thick fabric muffling any distant sounds from the outside world. The air in the spacious bedchamber or cubiculum would be cool, clean, carrying the faint, subtle scent of polished marble, of ancient cedarwood furniture, and perhaps the lingering fragrance of exotic dried flowers or perfumed oils from a nearby olla or incense burner. The silence of the room would be profound, broken only by your own soft, even breathing and the subtle creak of ancient timbers or the gentle rustle of a silk blanket as you shift in your comfortable, well-appointed bed, often adorned with fine linens and soft wool. The process of preparing for the day for a Roman patrician was an elaborate, unhurried ritual, meticulously orchestrated by a retinue of silent, efficient slaves or freedmen, each trained for their specific, quiet task. Imagine a personal attendant, moving with graceful, almost invisible steps, softly drawing back the heavy curtains, allowing the full, gentle light of morning to gradually fill the room. Another might quietly bring a basin of warm, scented water for washing, its steam rising gently in the cool air, carrying a subtle aroma of rose or lavender. For a lady, the dressing ritual alone could be a prolonged, intricate affair. Imagine the soft rustle of multiple layers of fine tunics made of linen or delicate silk. Her hair would be meticulously styled, a complex task involving combs, pins, and perhaps ribbons, performed by a ornatrix hairdresser, whose hands moved with practiced precision. Finally, the stola, a long flowing dress, or the palla, a large shawl, made of rich, vibrant fabrics, would be carefully draped and adjusted, their material whispering softly as they settled around her form. For a gentleman, the ritual involved a meticulous shave, the sharp, rhythmic stroke of the bronze or iron razor, the soothing warmth of scented oil. Then came the careful donning of a clean, flowing tunic, and finally, the impressive, heavy toga, a garment that required careful draping and adjustment, signifying his status. The atmosphere of these dressing rooms would be one of quiet efficiency, of subdued conversation, of meticulous attention to every detail, a calm, unhurried start to a day of structured elegance and public duty. Breakfast, a brief and light meal, would be a refined affair, often taken in a private dining alcove or a small garden courtyard, overlooking a tranquil scene. Imagine the delicate clinking of silver spoons against fine ceramic bowls, the gentle pouring of cool water or diluted wine. The aromas would be light and pleasant, the subtle, earthy scent of warm bread, perhaps a piece of fruit like figs or grapes, and occasionally some cheese. The sounds would be minimal, perhaps the faint, distant chirping of birds from the garden, or the soft murmur of water from a small, decorative fountain. This meal was not rushed. It was a time for calm, personal reflection, for savoring the quiet comforts of a well-ordered home before the more formal engagements of the day began. The discreet movements of the household slaves, ensuring every need was anticipated and met, would contribute to an unbroken sense of peace. Following breakfast, the patrician's morning would often transition to the salutatio, a formal ritual where clients, friends, and lower-ranking citizens would come to pay their respects and seek favors. Imagine the procession of visitors moving quietly through the villa's antechamber or atrium, a large, open reception hall. The sounds would be hushed, respectful greetings, low murmurs of polite conversation, and the soft, rhythmic patter of footsteps on the mosaic floor. The patrician would receive them, perhaps seated on a comfortable chair, offering calm advice, granting modest requests, or simply acknowledging their presence. This ritual, while a display of power, was conducted with a measured pace, an exchange of courtesies and obligations, all within a framework of formal, quiet dignity. There was no shouting, no chaotic rush. Every interaction was governed by ancient customs and unspoken rules, ensuring a calm, deliberate flow. After the salutatio, the gentleman of the house might dedicate his morning to intellectual pursuits in his tablinum or study, a quiet room often filled with scrolls and a large, imposing desk. Imagine him seated at this desk, its surface gleaming with a rich, dark polish, perhaps overlooking a serene garden or an internal peristyle courtyard adorned with columns. He would meticulously review scrolls detailing his family's affairs, legal documents, or perhaps engage in philosophical reading or writing. The soft rustle of papyrus scrolls being unrolled, the quiet scratching of a scribe's reed pen on wax tablets or parchment, the subtle turning of pages in a weighty historical account. These would be the predominant sounds of his administrative and intellectual tasks, all performed with a methodical, unhurried efficiency. This was a life of quiet power, where decisions were made with careful consideration, far from the hurried, reactive pace of commerce or the chaotic din of the public forum. The air would be filled with the faint scent of aged papyrus and ink, creating an atmosphere of deep concentration. For the Roman lady, the morning might involve managing her vast household, a complex undertaking that required meticulous organization and a calm demeanor. Imagine her moving gracefully through the villa's many rooms, quietly overseeing her slaves, delegating tasks, ensuring the smooth operation of the kitchen, the textile workshop, or the children's quarters. Her voice would be calm, measured, giving instructions with quiet authority. Or she might engage in social visits to other prominent ladies, traveling by litter, carried by strong, silent slaves, insulated from the street noise. The soft sway of the litter, the gentle murmur of distant city sounds, the rustle of her fine garments, these were the sensations of her transit. These visits were opportunities for polite conversation, for sharing news, or for engaging in quiet, intellectual discourse, all within the bounds of strict social etiquette. The clinking of delicate jewelry, the soft rustle of silk, the murmured exchange of pleasantries, these were the sounds of her tranquil social world. Midday would bring the prandium, a light lunch, often taken with little ceremony. Then, a significant part of the afternoon would be dedicated to leisure, often involving the public or private baths. Imagine the serene atmosphere of a private bathhouse within the villa, or a quiet section of a grand public bath. The sounds would be soothing, the gentle splash of water, the distant echo of voices, the soft hum of conversation, all mellowed by the large airy spaces. The warm steam rising from the tepidarium warm room, or caldarium hot room, would envelop your body, relaxing tired muscles. The cool water of the frigidarium cold room would offer a refreshing contrast. The body would be slowly cleansed, massaged and oiled, a ritual of purification and relaxation that was both physically comforting and profoundly meditative. The air would be heavy with the scent of warm water, scented oils, and perhaps a faint hint of marble. As the afternoon slowly progressed towards evening, the pace of life would remain unhurried, often culminating in the cena, the main evening meal. This was the most important meal of the day, a long, leisurely affair, often lasting for hours, consumed in the triclinium, the formal dining room. Imagine reclining comfortably on dining couches, propped up by soft cushions, as richly prepared dishes were brought in sequence by silent, efficient slaves. The aromas would be complex and enticing: roasted meats, fragrant spices from the east, sweet fruits, and the rich, earthy scent of fine wine. The sounds would be subtle: the gentle clinking of silverware against ornate plates, the quiet pouring of wine from elegant amphorae, and the hushed, intellectual conversation among the guests. This was a time for refined enjoyment, for philosophical debate, for literary recitations, all conducted in a tranquil, controlled environment, far removed from the clamor of the public sphere. The soft glow of oil lamps or candles would cast long, dancing shadows, creating an intimate, peaceful ambience. Evenings, following the elaborate cena, were often dedicated to quiet, intellectual entertainment or simple relaxation within the villa. Imagine sitting in a secluded corner of a courtyard, illuminated by the soft glow of moonlight or a few strategically placed lamps, listening to the gentle trickling of a fountain, its water reflecting the distant stars. A slave might read aloud from a famous Roman poet, their voice a calm rhythmic drone, inviting the listeners to drift into the stories and verses, or perhaps a small musical ensemble, playing soft, melodic tunes on a lyre or flute, their harmonies weaving gently through the quiet air. Games of strategy like tabula, a form of backgammon, or latran couli, a chess-like game, might be played in hushed tones, the clinking of game pieces the only sound, requiring quiet concentration. This was a time for intellectual stimulation, for aesthetic pleasure, but all within a framework of profound quietude and controlled elegance, a testament to the pursuit of otium, a concept of leisure dedicated to study, reflection, and the cultivation of the mind and spirit. The pervasive sense of order and quiet dignity within the patrician villa was maintained by a vast, largely unseen, network of household slaves and freedmen. They moved through the compound with a quiet efficiency that bordered on invisibility. Imagine their soft, almost imperceptible footsteps on the polished mosaic floors, their hushed whispers as they communicated tasks, their seamless execution of every chore: serving meals, cleaning, tending to the gardens, drawing baths, all performed without drawing attention, ensuring that the patrician's environment remained undisturbed and perfectly ordered. Their silent presence was a testament to the meticulous training and discipline instilled throughout the entire household, creating an atmosphere where every need was anticipated and met with seamless grace, reinforcing the sense of effortless luxury and control. As night deepened and the final oil lamps were softly extinguished by discreet hands, the great villa would slowly, gradually, settle into a profound, encompassing silence. The only sounds would be the soft creaking of old timbers as the vast structure responded to the cooling night air. Perhaps the distant, muffled hoot of an owl from the surrounding countryside, or the gentle rhythmic breathing of the sleeping inhabitants within their luxurious cubicula. This was the deep, restorative sleep earned through a day of structured elegance, of quiet management, and of serene social interaction. It was a profound rest that prepared the mind and body for the similar, unhurried rhythms of the coming dawn. A world of ordered splendor, far removed from the clamor of the Roman insula. And as you imagine yourself settling into this deep, quiet comfort, feeling the soft embrace of fine linen and listening to the profound stillness of an ancient, elegant Roman villa, allow your own mind to find its perfect stillness, drifting gently, peacefully into a deep and truly dream-filled sleep.